Spark information, the everything video part 4 continued.
For rental forms, if you are loading rental comps into a report that already has a 1004, then you would want to use the option right here. Let me just click it. That says minor, because that's the 1007 would then be considered a minor form. But if your report that you're loading it into does not have 1004, or it doesn't have any other form, just the 1007 is the main form, and then maybe a 216 or whatever else, but there's no other grid type form in there, then it would be your major, so you want to choose that. And this just prevents issues with certain form fillers filling things in incorrectly. Okay, so let's go ahead and get out of this, and now we're going to get into more of the nitty-gritty of the grid. So first of all, the GLA. I'm sorry, I should say first of all, the items that are in red, and I'm going to go over GLA, because Comp 3 right here, you can see that the above grade GLA is in red. It's 1692, and the same with Comp 4. It's 1703. So that means there's a discrepancy between MLS and public records. So if you want to look deeper at that, you just hover your mouse over it, and Spark will show you. MLS says 1703, public record says 1439. Now that tells me there's probably an unpermitted addition, which is why it's not showing up in public records. I mean, it could be other things as well, but that most likely in my area, that's going to be what it is. So then I can choose if I want to leave it at 1703 or change it to 1439. And by the way, you can also set defaults on these. So for example, if you always want your above grade GLA to default to the MLS, then over here where it says above grade GLA, you just click that, and then you change, so your data source preference is whatever you prefer, MLS or public records. You can also turn the entire row off by saying none, and it will show up as blank. So you just choose what you want, you hit save changes, and then you hit take me back. And so now Spark is going to always use MLS data by default. Now it still shows me in red, so I can see, yep, there's a discrepancy. But let's just say, for example, when it comes to garage, let's just say your public records is never accurate when it comes to parking. And so you don't care what public record says. You can just click over here where it says garage carport. You can say, yes, I want to default to MLS. And do you want to do the MLS public record comparison? No. Meaning you don't want Spark to show you in red when there's a discrepancy. So I change that to no, hit save changes and take me back. And now what you see is garage is no longer in red. So that's just going to show up in black. No discrepancy noted, because you just don't care whether parking, what public records has to say about that. So you just, essentially what you do is over on the left, you find the item you want to customize the way that data is going into Spark, and you click it. Whatever it is in blue over here, you click that. So let's just do one more example. So heating and cooling, I'm going to click that. Let's just say you don't like central air as your cooling. You're fine with FWA, but you don't like central air. You click heating, cooling, you find central air, and then you change it to what you want it to be. And it's pretty much that easy. You hit save changes, then take me back, and now Spark is loading it in like that. Now, I'm going to show you one other thing in heating and cooling. Essentially, you only have a list of 2 heating options, forced air and wall heat, and central air, evap, and window unit. So I'm in Phoenix, and this is the Phoenix MLS system that we're in. And Spark is customized heavily for every single MLS system. So what you see on your screen right now might be very different than what you see when you actually get in and are using Spark, because Spark will be showing you the heating and cooling options that are available in your MLS system. So in my MLS, this is all agents have as heating and cooling options. But in most areas of the country, there are quite a few more heating options. In Phoenix, we just don't need a lot of heating, so we don't have other options there. So that's it. And basically, all you do is you find what it is that the agent might have entered in, and you can tell Spark the way you want that to appear in the grid. So if you want wall heat to show up like this, then you just type in that. If you decide, you know what, maybe it's like hot water or something, hot water heat, and you just don't want that to show up at all, you just empty it out, make it blank, you hit save changes and take me back, and now Spark will no longer put anything in for wall heat. Okay, there's still a couple other things I want to show you. The bottom 3 lines of the grid, the miscellaneous or other lines of the grid, on a typical URAR, right below porch, patio, deck, you have those 3 where you can kind of put in whatever you want. Right now I've got pool features, exterior features, and then just nothing going in. So if you don't like what is in Spark by default, you just click it, just like everything else, and you change it. So if you don't like the full features, you just click that, and right here, this drop down, you change it to what you want it to be. There's a list of predefined things you can choose from, or you can just make it blank if you don't want anything to go in there. Let's say you want it to be fireplaces. You hit save changes, take me back, and there you go. You've got your fireplaces in there. And another thing you can do, by the way, when you're on this screen, so I'm going to click fireplaces again because I don't really want that in there. I'm going to change that back to full features. Just like I showed you with heating and cooling, these are just the options available in my MLS. If your MLS has different options, you might have different cool options here, but you tell it the way you want that data to go into the grid, and Spark will apply and put it in that way. You just hit save changes and take me back. And now this bottom line, for example, I have it blank right now. I think it's turned on in most MLSs by default though, so you just click it, and I can change it from none to, let's say I want it to be parcel number, and I want the parcel number to be the one from public records. Then I hit save changes and take me back. And so now parcel number is loading into that line. All right. Essentially the same thing applies to every single row. If you don't like the way verification source or data source is going in, maybe you don't like the abbreviation for your MLS number right before the actual number itself, you just click data source and change that to whatever you want. Now there might be something you have a question about right now, we get that a lot, is how did you figure out what quality, condition, functional utility, and location are? Well, those 4 lines in Spark, we do not know. I have them put in here for the webinar. This is, if you can see this profile up here, this is my webinar profile. So this is just to show you what all Spark could load into your report, but by default, when you first start up Spark, those lines will be empty. It is not going to load in anything for location, quality, condition, or functional utility. I just turn those on to show appraisers what they look like. So I'm just going to show you by clicking profile up here. I'm going to click webinar and change it to my standard profile. And so this is what that looks like. And you can see those lines are actually empty. So if you want it to put in a location, you always want it to, let's say, default to neutral residential. You just click location, and whatever you type in here is what Spark is going to put in. So I can just type in that, hit save changes, and take me back. And now I've got location loaded in across the board. Now I personally don't want that, so I'm going to turn that off and go back. And the same thing applies to quality and condition and functional utility. You just click it, type in whatever you want it to say, and Spark will put that in all the time. But those 4 lines we actually do not have information for, so by default they are turned off. Okay, so now profiles. I just was talking about those briefly, but let's talk about them a little bit more. Essentially, you can use these profiles to customize the way your grid looks. So for example, if you have a particular client that always wants something on this bottom line of the grid, maybe they always want original list price or list price to sale price ratio or whatever it is, they always want that down here. You can click this, you can go to manage profiles, and you can add a profile, you can copy profiles, and then once you have the profile loaded up, so let's just say you're using Spark for the first time, you go in and you make a copy. This is what I would do, is you copy your current profile that's in there, it'll probably be called standard, you clone that, and then Spark makes a duplicate, and then you just change the name of it to whatever you want. Maybe you want to call it lender ABC, and then when you're done, you hit go back, and then right here, you switch over to lender ABC, or whatever it is. I'm just switching back over to webinar. And then once you're in that, you can then go in and tweak everything. And whatever you save in that profile, it's only going to change that one profile. It won't affect your standard profile or your lender XYZ profile or whatever else. So that way you can kind of tweak things and have one quick little button here where you can change things to a completely different setup if that's what you prefer. And then in addition to that, you could also use it for different types of properties. So you could also have a profile for maybe complex properties. Maybe you load data in a little bit differently, or for condos, because on a condo, you probably aren't going to want like exterior features, which is going to be here. I'll just click on exterior features and show you, like the tennis court in the yard, the pool in the yard, the guest house, all that kind of stuff. Most condos aren't going to have that right inside the yard, so you probably aren't going to want exterior features. There might not be a lot, and so you might want to change that to something else on a condo form. So basically, when you're in a condo form, then you can just click this, change it over to your condo profile, and boom, everything is all set up the way you like to do condos. Yeah, so that's it. Now I'm just going to get into prior transfer history and then one other item regarding how you load additional comps into your actual report. So first let's go over prior transfer history. So these magnifying glasses down here at the bottom, I can click on any of those and Spark will show me the actual transfers for that property. And it will also show me if they're going to be included in my report. So since none of these transfers are in the past 3 years, they're not being included. Now you can customize that so Spark will load them in even though they're over 3 years old, but that's not how I have it set up, so they're not going in. If you decide, you know what, I actually want this transfer to go into my report as a prior transfer, you just click it, and then you saw that green checkbox appear, and so now that transfer is going to go into my report. It's going to say, the date, the price. It's going to have a comment in there that says what the document number is, the buyer, the seller, what type of deed it was, all that kind of stuff. That's all going to roll into my report, and I'll show you that at the very end of this video here when we load data into an actual report. And then if I click on comp 1, you can see that one, there's a transfer in the past 12 months from the data sale, so it's loading that in. And let's go through. And this one, there's actually 2 transfers, and so on. So we can just go on through here, see everything, and you can tweak it if you need to. Now, if I click prior transfer history, you can see that actually before I click it, it says the subject, we're looking 36 months back, and for the comps, we're looking 12 months back. If you don't like that, maybe you have a client that wants the comps to go back 36 months instead of 12, you just click prior transfer history, and here's where you can customize all that. And that's the 12 right there. You can just change that to whatever. You can go back 10 years if you wanted to. Whatever it is you prefer, you just change it to that, and that's how Spark will handle it going forward. But keep in mind, there's one important difference there between us and other similar products is Spark will not only load in the most recent transfer that's...
Okay, I'm ending it at 42 minutes.